Park heard the explosion before he saw the fire. He was sitting on his porch, drinking tea and watching the sunset paint the mountains orange and gold. The sound came from the east, deep and loud, like thunder that would not stop rolling. Then he saw the streak of light cutting across the sky, burning white and leaving a trail of black smoke behind it. He put down his tea and stood. The light disappeared behind the mountain ridge. A few seconds later, the ground shook. It was a forest ranger. He had lived alone in this cabin for 3 years, ever since his wife passed away. The mountains were his only company now. He knew every trail, every stream, every hidden valley. Whatever had crashed was about 4 kilometers away, in a place where no roads went. He grabbed his jacket, his flashlight, and his radio. He tried to call the main station, but the radio only gave him static. Strange. He tried again. Nothing. He decided to go anyway. The walk took him 2 hours. The forest was dark and the smoke made it hard to breathe in some places. When he finally reached the crash site, he stopped and stared. It was not a plane. It was not a satellite. It was something else entirely. The object was the size of a small house, shaped like a curved shell, and made of a metal that seemed to shift colors when he looked at it from different angles. Parts of it were burning with a strange blue flame that gave off no heat. The trees around it were flattened, pushed outward in a perfect circle. Approached slowly. His heart was beating fast, but he was not the kind of man who ran away from things he did not understand. He had faced bears, storms, and once a wildfire that nearly killed him. Fear was something he had learned to walk beside, not run from. He heard a sound, weak, soft, like someone trying to breathe through water. He moved around the wreckage and found the opening. The shell had cracked on one side, revealing a dark interior filled with smoke and flickering lights. And there, lying in the debris, was a figure. At first thought it was a woman. The shape was right. The size was right. But when he got closer, he saw the differences. The skin was too pale, almost white, with a faint glow beneath it like moonlight trapped under ice. The fingers were too long, 6 on each hand, and the eyes, when they opened and looked at him, were solid silver with no whites or pupils at all. She was dying. He could see that clearly. Her breathing was shallow, her body was thin, and there was no blood anywhere, but somehow he knew she was badly hurt. She tried to speak. The sounds were not words he recognized. They were musical, rising and falling like a song, but broken and weak. Knelt beside her. He did not know what she was. He did not know where she came from, but he knew what dying looked like, and he knew he could not leave her here. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her. She was cold, so cold, like holding snow that had learned to breathe. He carried her back to his cabin. She weighed almost nothing. The next few days were difficult. Did not know how to help her. He tried giving her water, but she did not drink. He tried giving her food, but she turned her head away from everything he offered. He kept her warm, cleaned her wounds with what little medical knowledge he had, and waited. On the 4th day, she opened her eyes and looked at him clearly for the first time. He was sitting beside her bed, reading an old book. When he noticed her watching him, he put the book down and smiled. "Hello," he said, "can you understand me?" She stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "Good," he said. "My name is, you are safe here, I will not hurt you." She tried to speak again. This time the sounds were different, slower, more careful. It took him a moment to realize she was trying to copy his language. "Do," she said. Her voice was thin, like wind through dry leaves. "Yes," he said. "And you, what is your name?" She struggled for a moment, then made a sound he could not repeat, but part of it sounded like Vila, so that is what he called her. Over the next 2 weeks, learned 3 important things about Vila. First, she was not from Earth. She came from a world very far away, a world that no longer existed. Something had destroyed it, something called the Hollow. She showed him pictures in his mind, images of cities burning, of ships fleeing into the dark, of silence spreading across the stars. Her people, they were nearly extinct. She had been running for a long time. Second, she did not eat food. She ate something else: emotions, energy, the warmth that living things gave off when they felt things strongly. Her people had evolved to survive on this energy the way humans survived on bread and water. Without it, they starved, and she was starving. Third, humans were different from anything she had ever encountered. One evening was cooking dinner for himself. He was making a simple soup, the kind his wife used to make. Halfway through, he started humming a song without thinking about it. An old song, a sad song. He did not realize he was crying until he tasted salt on his lips. He wiped his eyes and looked over at Vila. She was sitting up in bed, staring at him with an expression he had never seen before. "What?" he asked. "You," she said. Her speaking had improved quickly, too quickly, really. "What you just did, the sound, the water from your eyes, the feeling inside you." "I was just remembering someone," he said. "Yes," she said, "but the energy, it is so strong, so bright. I have never felt anything like it." She touched her chest. "I feel less empty now." Understood then. His grief, his love, his memory of his wife, it had fed her. The feeling that had been living inside him for 3 years that he had never been able to let go of had given her strength. He sat down beside her bed. "So that is what you need, feelings." "Yes," she said, "but most species give very little, like drops of water in a desert, enough to survive but never enough to be full." She looked at him. "You are different. Humans are different. You feel so much, so deeply. One moment of your sadness gave me more than a week of feeding from others would." Thought about this for a long time. Then he laughed, not because it was funny, but because he did not know what else to do. "Well," he said, "I have been sad for a long time. If that can help you, I guess some good can come from it." Vila looked at him with those silver eyes. "You would share this with me, your pain, your heart." "You were dying," he said simply. "I could not just watch." She did not have words for what she felt then, but for the first time in many years, she felt something she thought she had lost forever. She felt hope. Outside the cabin, the stars turned slowly in the sky. None of them knew yet that everything was about to change. But deep in space, something old and hungry was moving, and somewhere in the dark, a signal had been sent. Vila was no longer alone, and the galaxy would soon learn what that meant. 3 months passed. Vila grew stronger every day. She could walk now, talk clearly, and even laugh at terrible jokes. Her skin still glowed faintly in the dark, and her silver eyes still made him feel like she was looking through him instead of at him. But she had become something he never expected. She had become his friend. Taught her about Earth. He showed her the forest, the rivers, the way snow fell in winter and melted into streams in spring. He played old songs on his radio and watched her close her eyes and drink in the emotions of long-dead singers. He told her about his wife, about the life they had planned together, about the sickness that took her before they could grow old. Vila listened to everything. She never judged. She never offered empty words of comfort. She simply sat beside him and let him feel whatever he needed to feel. In return, she told him about the stars. The galaxy, she explained, was full of life. Hundreds of species had built civilizations, formed alliances, fought wars, and made peace. But for the past 500 years, a shadow had been spreading across everything: the Hollow. No one knew where they came from. They appeared without warning, consuming everything in their path. They did not conquer planets. They did not take prisoners. They simply erased. Worlds, species, histories, all of it gone like it had never existed at all. They had been one of the first to fall. Vila was one of the last of her kind. Maybe the very last. She did not know. "Why did you come to Earth?" asked one night. "I did not choose to," she said. "My ship was damaged. I was drifting. Your planet was simply in my path. I expected to die here in the middle of nowhere on a world that nobody in the galaxy even knows exists. Nobody knows about Earth. Your planet is in what we call a dead zone, far from the main shipping routes, far from any empire's territory. Too small, too young, too primitive to matter." She paused. "No offense." Laughed, "None taken. We probably are primitive compared to you." Vila smiled, but there was sadness in it. "Maybe, but you are also something I have never seen before. The way you feel things, the way you care. I have met many species, none of them are like you." He did not know what to say to that, so he made tea instead. The trouble started in the 4th month. Had a sister named Park. She was younger than him by 5 years, worked as a journalist in Seoul, and had a habit of showing up without warning when she was worried about him. She had been worried about him for 3 years. When her car pulled up to the cabin one cold morning, felt his stomach drop. Vila was inside. There was no time to hide her. Walked in without knocking, she always did, and stopped dead in the middle of the room. Vila was standing by the window, wrapped in a blanket, her silver eyes wide with surprise. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then screamed. It took an hour to calm her down, another hour to explain, and another hour for her to stop looking at Vila like she might attack at any moment. "This is insane," said. She was sitting at the kitchen table holding a cup of tea with shaking hands. "You found an alien in the mountains and you just kept her." "I saved her," said. "She was dying." "She's an alien." "She's my friend." Stared at him. Then she looked at Vila, who had not moved or spoken since the screaming stopped. "Can you prove it?" asked. "Can you prove any of this?" Vila stepped forward slowly. "I can show you," she said. Her voice was soft, careful. "If you let me, I can share my memories with you. You will see what I have seen. You will understand." Looked at, he nodded. "Fine," said. "Show me." Vila reached out and touched forehead with 2 fingers, gasped and closed her eyes. What she saw changed her forever. She saw Vila's world, a planet of crystal towers and endless gardens where they lived in peace for 10,000 years. She saw the day the hollow came, ships that blocked out the sun, silence that spread like a wave, people vanishing, not dying but simply ceasing to exist, erased from reality itself. She saw Vila running, fighting, losing everyone she loved. She saw the long years of drifting alone in the dark, watching her body weaken, feeling hope die piece by piece. She saw the crash. She saw carrying her through the forest. She saw the moment she first tasted human emotion and felt, for the first time in decades, that she might survive. When Vila pulled her hand away, was crying. "I am sorry," Vila said. "I know it is a lot to take in." Wiped her eyes. She looked at Vila differently now, not with fear, with something else. "They're coming here, aren't they?" asked. "Eventually the hollow, they'll come to Earth." Vila was quiet for a moment. "Yes," she said finally. "Eventually, maybe not for 100 years, maybe not for 1,000, but they will come. They always do." "Can we stop them?" Vila shook her head. "Your species is too young. Your technology is too primitive. By the time you are ready to fight them, it will be too late. They will erase you the way they erased us." Stood up, her hands were no longer shaking. Her eyes were hard now, determined in a way had not seen since they were children. "No," she said. Vila blinked. "No. You said humans feel things differently, stronger. You said we're not like other species, so maybe we don't have to fight them the same way. Maybe we can find another way." Vila looked at her with something like wonder. "You have known about the hollow for 5 minutes. You have seen what they can do, and your first response is to think about how to defeat them." "My first response is to refuse to give up," said. "That's different." Smiled. He had forgotten what his sister was like when she decided to fight for something. He had forgotten how stubborn she could be. "She has a point," he said to Vila. "Humans are good at solving problems that seem impossible. We have been doing it for thousands of years." Vila was silent for a long time. She looked at these 2 humans, one who had saved her from death, one who had just decided to challenge the greatest threat in the galaxy after seeing it for 5 minutes. "You are strange creatures," she said finally. "Yes," agreed. "We are. Now tell me everything you know about these hollow. Tell me about your technology. Tell me about the other species who survived. I need to understand everything." "Why?" Looked out the window at the mountains, the sky, the stars that were just beginning to appear in the evening light. "Because I am going to find people who can help, scientists, engineers, soldiers, people who will believe me, or at least people who will listen. We are going to learn everything you can teach us, and when the hollow come, we are going to be ready." Vila felt something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. It was the same feeling she had felt when first wrapped his jacket around her in the wreckage of her ship. "Hope." "Very well," Vila said. "I will teach you, but you must understand this will take a very long time, perhaps longer than your lifetime." Smiled. It was not a gentle smile. It was the smile of someone who had just declared war. "Then we better get started," she said. Outside, the stars watched in silence. They had no idea what was coming. Moved fast. Within 6 months, she had built something that should not have existed. She called it the Lantern. On the surface, the Lantern was a private research foundation focused on climate science. It had an office in Seoul, a website, and all the proper paperwork. Nobody looked at it twice. But beneath the surface, the Lantern was something else entirely. It was a secret network of scientists, engineers, soldiers, and thinkers. People had carefully selected because they were brilliant, open-minded, and willing to believe impossible things. She did not tell them everything at first. She started with questions. What if faster-than-light travel was possible? What if there were other civilizations in the galaxy? What if humanity needed to prepare for something bigger than any threat it had ever faced? The ones who laughed at her, she let go. The ones who listened, she kept. After a year, the Lantern had 47 members. After 2 years, it had over 200. Brought them to the cabin in the mountains, one small group at a time, and introduced them to Vila. Some fainted. Some ran away and never came back. But most stayed. Most looked into Vila's silver eyes, heard her story, and made the same choice had made. They chose to fight. Vila began teaching them. She shared what she knew about science, the principles behind faster-than-light travel, the basics of energy manipulation, the structure of ships that could survive the emptiness of space. She expected the humans to struggle. Her own people had taken centuries to develop these technologies. The humans surprised her. There was a young physicist named. She was 26 years old, worked at a university and had a habit of forgetting to eat when she was thinking about a problem. Had recruited her after reading a paper she wrote about quantum mechanics. Spent 3 months studying the equations Vila shared. She asked questions constantly, strange questions, questions that seemed to come from nowhere. Why does this work? What if we change this part? What happens if we think about it backwards? Vila tried to explain that these were not the right questions. The equations worked because they worked. They had proven them thousands of years ago. Ignored her. After 18 months, walked into a meeting with a stack of papers in her hands and a look on her face like she had not slept in weeks. "I figured it out," she said. "Faster than light travel, I know how to build an engine." The room went silent. Vila took the papers and read through them slowly. Her hands began to shake. "This is wrong," she said. His face fell. "Wrong, but the math." "No," Vila said. "I mean it is wrong according to everything I know. You approached the problem in a way that makes no sense to me. You ignored half of the established principles and invented new ones to replace them." She looked up at, "But it works. According to your calculations, it works." "Is that good?" asked. "It is impossible," Vila said, "but yes, it is good." Was not the only one. There was a retired military strategist named. He was 63 years old, had fought in 2 wars, and had spent the last decade writing books that nobody read about unconventional warfare. Found him in a small apartment inn, living alone with his books and his regrets. When Vila explained how the Hollow fought, overwhelming numbers, perfect coordination, total destruction, listened carefully. Then he shook his head. "You have been fighting them wrong," he said. Vila stared at him. "We fought them for 500 years. "And you lost," said, "because you fought them on their terms. Big armies against big armies, fleet against fleet. That is not how you beat an enemy that is bigger than you." "Then how?" Smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had learned how to hurt things much larger than himself. "You make them afraid," he said. "You hit them where they do not expect. You disappear before they can respond. You make them spend 10 soldiers to kill one of yours, and then you make them wonder if it was worth it. You do not defeat them. You exhaust them. You make victory cost more than they are willing to pay." Vila was quiet for a long time. "My people would never have thought of this," she said finally. "Your people were peaceful," said. "Mine have been killing each other for as long as we have existed. It is not something to be proud of, but it means we understand something your people never did." "What is that?" "How to be dangerous even when we are small." 3 years passed, then 4, then 5. The lantern grew. They built a secret facility in the mountains, hidden beneath the ground, where they could work without anyone watching. They developed new technologies, trained new people, and prepared for a war that might not come for generations. Watched all of this with quiet amazement. He was not a scientist or a soldier. He was just a forest ranger who had made a choice one night in the mountains. But somehow, that choice had started something that was changing the world. He still spent most of his time with Vila. They walked through the forest together, watched the stars at night, and talked about everything and nothing. She told him stories about her, the gardens, the music, the people she had loved and lost. He told her stories about Earth, the wars, the art, the strange and beautiful ways humans had found to survive. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Vila said something that surprised him. "I understand now," she said. "Understand what?" "Why humans feel so strongly, why your emotions are so powerful." She turned to look at him. "It is because you know you are going to die." Was quiet for a moment. "That is a strange thing to say." "My people lived for thousands of years," Vila said. "We had time for everything. We could wait. We could be patient. We never felt urgency because there was always more time." She paused. "But you do not have that. You live for such a short time. Every moment matters to you. Every feeling is important because you know it might be your last." She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was still cool, but it felt warm to him now. He had gotten used to it. "That is why you are so strong," she said. "That is why you can do things my people never could. You do not have the luxury of waiting, so you act. You fight. You love with everything you have because you know you will not have it forever." Thought about his wife. He thought about the life they had planned, the time they had lost, the love that had burned so brightly and ended so soon. "Maybe you are right," he said. "Maybe knowing we are going to die is what makes us alive." Vila smiled. It was a real smile now, not the careful expression she had learned in her first months on Earth. She had changed. This planet had changed her. "I think it is time," she said. "Time for what?" "Time to tell the others, the ones who survived, the species who are still fighting the Hollow." She squeezed his hand. "I am going to send a message. I am going to tell them what I found here. I am going to tell them about you." "What will you say?" Vila looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there in the darkness between worlds, her people were still fighting, still dying, still hopping for something they had never been able to name. "I will tell them," she said, "that hope is not dead. I will tell them that I found something in a dead zone on a primitive planet, among a species that everyone forgot about. something that changes everything. And what is that? She turned to look at him, her silver eyes bright with something that might have been tears. I found a reason to keep fighting. That night, Vila sent her message into the stars. It was short, encrypted, hidden in frequencies that only her people would recognize. It said, "I have found something, come and see." And far away, in the darkness between galaxies, something began to move. 7 years after Vila crashed in the mountains of Earth, humanity launched its first interstellar ship. They called it the, which meant sunlight in Korean. It was not a large ship, barely 200 meters long, with room for a crew of 12, but it was beautiful. Sleek and silver, with engines that bent space itself, it was proof that humans could do the impossible when they decided to try. Stood in the observation deck, watching Earth grow smaller in the distance. He was 53 years old now. His hair had gone gray. His body ached in places it had not ached before. But he was here, standing on a ship that was traveling faster than light, leaving behind the only world he had ever known. Vila stood beside him, her silver eyes reflecting the stars. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "Yes," he said honestly, "but I was afraid when I found you in the wreckage too. Fear never stopped me from doing what needed to be done." She smiled. "That is very human of you." The crew of the was small but capable, was there, of course. She had spent 7 years building toward this moment, and nothing could have kept her on Earth. Had come too, eager to see if her theories worked in practice. Was the oldest member of the crew at 68, but he refused to be left behind. He said he had spent his whole life preparing for a war he never got to fight, and he was not going to miss this one. The others were soldiers, scientists, and engineers, people who had believed in something bigger than themselves and were willing to risk everything for it. Their destination was a place called The Gathering. Vila explained that it was a neutral station at the edge of known space, where representatives from surviving civilizations met to share information about the Hollow. It had existed for 300 years, hidden from the enemy, kept secret through a network of trust that had never been broken. Until now. The journey took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of traveling through the black emptiness between stars, watching the universe blur around them as the engines bent space and time. The crew spent the time preparing, reviewing protocols, practicing combat drills, learning the languages Vila had taught them. Humans, it turned out, were very good at learning languages. Vila had expected it to take years. It took months. By the time they reached the gathering, the crew could speak 3 galactic tongues well enough to be understood. The gathering was not what expected. He had imagined something grand, a massive station, gleaming with advanced technology, filled with strange and wonderful beings. What he found was something more like a graveyard. The station was old, ancient. Its metal was with battle damage, its lights flickered constantly, and the corridors smelled of age and exhaustion. The beings who lived there were survivors, not conquerors. Refugees from 100 dead worlds clinging to hope with their fingernails. When the docked and the crew stepped out, the response was immediate. Silence. The chamber they entered was large, built for meetings between species. Dozens of aliens were present, creatures of every shape and size, with scales and fur and feathers, with too many eyes or no eyes at all. They had been talking, arguing, planning. Now they stared at the humans with expressions could not read. Vila walked forward. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. An old stepped toward her. His skin was gray where hers was white, his glow dim where hers was bright. He looked at her like he was seeing a ghost. "Vila," he said, his voice cracked. "We thought you were dead, we thought our kind was finished." "I survived," Vila said, "and I found something." She turned and gestured to the humans behind her. The chamber erupted. Not in anger, in confusion. Questions poured from every direction in languages did not understand. He heard his species mentioned again and again. Humans, Earth, impossible, primitive, dead zone. Stepped forward. She spoke in the most common galactic language, her accent strange but her words clear. My name is Park. I represent Earth. We are here because Vila told us you need help. A tall creature with purple scales and 4 arms laughed. It was not a kind laugh. Help, it said, from you. Your species was not supposed to achieve for another 3 centuries. You are insects. You are nothing. Stepped forward. He was old, gray, and looked like a strong wind might knock him over. But when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of a man who had seen death and refused to bow to it. We built this ship in 7 years, he said. We developed faster-than-light travel in 18 months. We learned your languages in 6. He looked directly at the purple creature. You have been fighting the Hollow for 500 years and losing. Maybe it is time to stop calling other species insects and start listening to new ideas. The chamber went quiet again. Vila felt something strange in the room. It took her a moment to recognize it. The emotional energy had shifted. When the humans first entered, she had sensed confusion, dismissal, even contempt. Now she sensed something else. Curiosity, and beneath that, something even more powerful. Fear. These species had never met anything like humans before. The intensity of their emotions, the speed of their progress, the sheer stubbornness of their existence. It was unlike anything in the galaxy's long history. The old stepped forward again. He looked at Vila with tears in his eyes. What are they? He asked. Vila turned to look at her human friends, at who had carried her from the wreckage when she was dying, at who had decided to fight an impossible war after 5 minutes of knowledge, at who had solved equations that should have taken centuries, at who understood violence in ways her peaceful people never could. They are what happens, she said, when you give compassion to the starving. The old was quiet for a long moment, then he bowed his head. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should listen to what they have to say. The meeting lasted for hours. The humans presented their ideas, their technologies, their strategies. They showed the gathered species what they had built in 7 years, not just the ship, but the training programs, the weapons, the tactics that had developed for fighting an enemy that could not be defeated through strength alone. Some species were convinced, others remained skeptical, but none of them dismissed the humans as insects anymore. When the meeting finally ended, found himself standing alone in an observation room, looking out at the stars. Vila found him there. You did well today, she said. I did not do anything, he said. Did the talking, did the convincing, I just stood there. You did something more important, Vila said. You started this. When you found me in the mountains, you did not run. You did not report me to your authorities. You did not leave me to die. You made a choice, and that choice led to everything. Was quiet for a long time. I was just doing what anyone would do, he said finally. No, Vila said. That is not true. Most beings would have been afraid. Most beings would have protected themselves first. You chose differently. You chose kindness. And because of that choice, your species is now standing in a room full of aliens, offering to help fight a war that has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with us, said. The Hollow will come to Earth eventually. You said so yourself. Yes, but you could have waited, you could have hidden, you could have hoped they would never find you. Vila shook her head. Instead, you came here. You offered your hand to strangers. That is not survival, that is something else. What is it? Vila smiled. I do not know, my people never had a word for it, but I think your people do. What word? She took his hand, her cool fingers wrapping around his warm ones. Humanity. Outside the observation window, the stars burned in the darkness. Somewhere out there, the Hollow were moving, consuming, erasing. But here, in this ancient station at the edge of known space, something new had begun. The galaxy had met humanity, and nothing would ever be the same. They came without warning. The gathering had stood hidden for 300 years. Generations of refugees had lived and died within its walls, believing they were safe. They were wrong. The alarm sounded at midnight station time, a sound that had not been heard in centuries, a deep, shaking tone that meant only one thing. The Hollow had found them. Was in his quarters when the alarm woke him. He dressed quickly and ran to the observation deck. What he saw there made his blood freeze. Ships, hundreds of them, they hung in space like a wall of darkness blocking out the stars. They were shaped wrong, built wrong, designed in ways that hurt the eyes to look at. They did not shine. They absorbed light, swallowed it, left only emptiness behind. The Hollow Fleet. Around him, the station was falling into chaos. Aliens ran through the corridors, screaming in languages he did not understand. Some were trying to reach escape pods. Others were simply standing still, staring at nothing, already accepting death. Found him in the crowd. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. "We have to do something," she said. "What can we do? There are hundreds of them." "We have a ship, we have weapons, we have tactics." She grabbed his arm. "We did not come all this way to die without a fight." Looked at her. She was his little sister, the girl he had taught to ride a bike, the woman who had refused to accept the end of the world. She was afraid. He could see it in her eyes. But she was not running. "Okay," he said, "let us fight." The crew of the gathered quickly, was already at her station running calculations, was giving orders, his voice calm and steady despite the chaos. The soldiers were checking their weapons. Everyone was scared. No one was backing down. Vila stood at the center of the bridge, her silver eyes fixed on the Hollow Fleet. "They are not attacking yet," she said. "They are waiting." "Waiting for what?" asked. "To see if we will surrender, to see if we will run. The Hollow do not enjoy fighting. They prefer to consume without resistance. They will give us time to despair before they move." Laughed. It was a harsh sound, but there was something alive in it. "Then they have made a mistake," he said. "We do not despair, we use time." He turned to the crew. "Here is what we are going to do. We are one ship against hundreds. We cannot win through force, but we can hurt them. We can make them bleed. We can show them that humans do not go quietly." He explained the plan. It was insane. It was desperate. It relied on everything the Hollow would not expect: speed, aggression, and a willingness to take damage that no rational species would accept. The crew listened. When he finished, no one objected. "One more thing," said he. Looked at. "I want you to broadcast something, on all frequencies, something the entire Hollow Fleet will hear." "What do you want me to broadcast?" Smiled. "Music." The launched. It was a tiny silver needle against a wall of darkness. It should not have mattered. It should not have been enough. But humans had never cared about should. Was at the weapons station, his hands steady on the controls. Was managing the engines, pushing them beyond their limits. Was coordinating with the station, trying to organize the other ships into some kind of defense. Vila was standing beside, feeding him information about the Hollow ships, their weak points, their patterns, their blind spots. And through the void, filling every frequency, came the sound of music. It was an old song, a Korean song, something's grandmother used to sing when he was a child. It was about hope, about surviving, about refusing to give up even when everything was lost. The Hollow hesitated. Vila had told them that the Hollow were sensitive to emotional energy. They consumed it, used it, fed on it. They expected fear. They expected despair. They expected silence. What they got instead was something they had never encountered. Defiance. The plunged into the Hollow formation like a knife into flesh. It twisted, spun, and dove through gaps that should not have existed. It fired weapons that should not have hurt anything, but had modified them, tuned them to frequencies that disrupted the Hollow's strange ships. Explosions bloomed in the darkness, one Hollow ship, then two, then five. The music kept playing. The hollow fleet began to move. Ships turned to pursue but the humans were faster, crazier, more unpredictable than anything they had faced. Tactics worked perfectly. Every time the hollow thought they had trapped the human ship, it slipped away. Every time they tried to overwhelm it with numbers, the humans found a gap and escaped. They were bleeding the hollow, slowly, painfully, but unmistakably. And the rest of the gathering saw it. Ships that had been running for escape pods stopped. Weapons that had been powered down came back online. Species that had been preparing to die began to prepare to fight. Because if one tiny human ship could do this, could hurt the enemy, could make them stumble, then maybe it was not over. Maybe there was still a chance. The battle lasted for 3 hours. They took damage, terrible damage. By the end, half the systems were failing, the hull was breached in 2 places, and every member of the crew was injured. But the hollow were retreating. Not destroyed, not defeated, but hurt enough, confused enough that they pulled back their forces and disappeared into the darkness between stars. The music finally stopped. In the silence that followed, the entire station held its breath. Then, slowly, the communications channels came alive. Species that had never spoken to humans before were sending messages, thanking them, praising them, asking them how they had done the impossible. Was bleeding from a wound on his head, but he was grinning. He opened a channel to the station. "We are not done yet," he said. His voice was tired, but there was iron in it. "That was just the beginning. We hurt them today. Tomorrow we hurt them again. And we keep hurting them until they learn to fear us." He paused. "My name is, I am from a planet called Earth, and we are here to fight." Later, when the crew had been treated for their injuries and was being repaired, found Vila standing alone in the observation deck. She was crying. Not the careful, controlled emotion she had shown for years. Real tears, real grief, real hope mixed together in a way that made her shoulders shake. Stood beside her and said nothing. He just waited. "I did not think I would live to see this," she said finally. "I thought my people were gone. I thought the hollow would consume everything. I thought hope was just a word we used to comfort ourselves before the end." She turned to look at him. Her silver eyes were bright, almost glowing. "But you, your people, you came from nothing. You were supposed to be primitive, forgotten, irrelevant, and you just made the hollow retreat. We had help, said, we had you. I gave you knowledge, you gave yourselves everything else." She took his hand. "Do you understand what you have done? For 300 years no one has made the hollow retreat. No one has given them a reason to fear, until today." Looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there the hollow were regrouping. They would come back. They would try again. The war was far from over. But today, humanity had announced itself to the galaxy. Today, they had proven that they were not going to die quietly. "We do not know how to give up," said simply. "It is not in our nature." Vila smiled through her tears. "I know, that is what makes you terrifying." Behind them the door opened, and came in, followed by and the rest of the crew. They gathered at the observation window, looking out at the station they had saved. Other ships were moving now, dozens of them. They were not fleeing anymore. They were forming up, organizing, preparing to fight. And at the center of the formation, damaged but unbroken, was the... "What happens now?" asked. Vila looked at the fleet forming around them. Species that had been hiding for centuries were coming out of the shadows. Species that had lost hope were finding it again. "Now," she said, "we build something new. We teach them what you taught me. We show them that strength is not about how big you are or how advanced your technology is. It is about how hard you are willing to fight for each other." She turned to look at the humans, her family, her friends, the strange, stubborn, beautiful creatures who had saved her life and changed the galaxy. "The stars are watching now," she said, "and they see something they have never seen before. They see humanity." Put his arm around his sister, leaned against him, exhausted but alive. "What do you think they see?" he asked. Vila smiled. It was the smile she had ever given. "They see hope," she said. "They see the future." Outside, the stars burned in the endless dark. The Hollow were still out there. The war was just beginning. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy believed it could win. And in the center of it all, a species that had been forgotten, dismissed,